Hello everyone. As promised, this is the second of a two-part series showing the transcripted story of Cap Hatfield's jailbreak, supposed jailbreak. By now, you probably or hopefully have seen the first one of the series that showed the original videotape that I made from the audio tape back in 2002. If you haven't seen that one yet, this story may be a little bit lost for you because I'm going to be jumping into a little bit of the details of the story but not reading the transcript, which is what this is. And so if you haven't seen it, go back and watch it first and come back to this one. Since I'm limited to 10 minutes, I'm going to try and talk a little quick and hit the high points and show you all the pictures and the maps. While you're watching, don't forget to read this side here. This is the book called The Messenger that my dad wrote. My great-granddad told him all these stories and more. And my dad wrote this book and put it on Amazon. It's been up for about a year now. It's been doing really good. It's a really good read. Go to Amazon, query Claude Chafin up there, and you'll find the book. So let's get started. What I want to do is start out at the big picture level, the 30,000 foot level here, which is what this map is here. When he was asked or told by Devil Anse Hatfield to go to Williamson, this is the route that he describes in the transcript. As a matter of fact, it says right here, go over to Pigeon Creek down to Del Barton from Cow Creek. So they went to the end of Cow Creek, over the Rock House Fork to Varney. Pigeon Creek runs from Varney to Taylorsville to the short side of Del Barton, then down Sycamore Creek to Williamson. And my granddad, Andrew Chafin's son, Raymond, helped him remember some of these locations, because you got to remember this interview was done in 1972 when Andrew Chafin was in his 80s. So that was the path. It turns out that on Google Maps this is a trip of about 22 miles as a 10-year-old. That would be amazing. And in the topo map that I used in my 2002 trip, it clearly tells us where Pigeon Creek is, right here, which is the same as this spot right here. So it all matches up. So going back up here to the beginning of the story of the Cap Hatfield break, page 18, which is right here, this is a picture of me when I was 8 years old. So put that in perspective. My great-granddad was 10 years old when he jumped on a horse, as Devil Anse instructed him, gave him an envelope, said take this to Bank High Williamson and wait on Cap. So overall, what you hear is that obviously Devil Anse sent some money or something in that envelope, which Andrew Chafin didn't look in. He just knew that he was given something to take to Bank High Williamson. And the next thing you know, Cap's out of jail and getting on the horse that Andrew Chafin brought with him. And so that's where we pick up right here. He's telling us he gave me letters to Bank High Williamson. In other words, he gave him letters and said, take this to Bank High Williamson. And so there was some obvious trading going on there. And when he came into Williamson, the story goes that he was supposed to drop off one horse at Dr. Lawson's. And I know this is where Dr. Lawson's is because we went up in the neighborhood back in 2002, Andy and Betty and myself, and we found a man cutting his yard. I went up and asked him if he'd ever heard of it. He said absolutely. He played there as a kid. So he walked us over there and showed us this flat spot between the two roads and said this is where his place was. And so we have confirmation that that's the spot. And then when you come into Williamson, this is that high road. And back then, a part of the railroad was there, but not as you see it today. It's a huge, huge railroad juncture today. It was just probably one or two lines back then. And then when he comes into town, he was to go to Bank High, Pike and 3rd Street, and the courthouse is located over here behind the old cold house that you see today. The cold house is just a visiting spot, and there's a parking lot behind it, and that's where the old jail was, the old jail courthouse. And this is an aerial photo of where that spot is coming into Williamson, coming out of the mountains and into the road here. This is the railroad, and this is where Dr. Lawson's is, and this is where we found it. This is where that neighbor took us, and you can see this obvious flat spot here. Now it's just grown over today. As a matter of fact, if you went there during the summer, you would probably not even see it because it's all grown over. We went there during the winter. As you can see, it's cold, and all the leaves had fallen, and so it was easy to get to. And then I went to this restaurant here. It's a prescription drugstore with a restaurant in there. And the backside entry on the wall was this picture of the First National Bank, what they called Bank High Williamson back then. And the lady in the store told me that. And found it all on the wall in the lobby of the drugstore. And noticed that there's no cars, no power lines, and the windows are broken out. And notice the clothes that people are wearing. That's the building that was standing right here on this corner. In my 2002 trip, a man in that prescription store told us when we asked about it, he says, yeah, he knew of the building because he had seen it before they tore it down, and it sat right here on this parking lot. So that's a confirmation right there from an eyewitness plus the picture. Now, moving on down here, you're going to see that when he came into town, he was required to go to the county courthouse and sit out there and wait. He was supposed to sit on a park bench and wait for Cap to come out. And so there's the picture of the original courthouse, circa 1875, 1905. And this is the picture of Williamson in 1890. So there's the courthouse. You can see right in the center there where the courthouse is. And so this is actually where he talks about what he did. This is the time. This is the picture of the time when he walked into town and waited on Cap Hatfield to get out of jail. It was not a jailbreak like they said. Now, like I said earlier, Granddad talks about how it was a 45-minute trip, what he thought was a 45-minute trip. But again, he was old in age. It was 1972, 70-something years later. This map here shows it was 22 miles. But again, that's by way of roads that I know of. There's no telling if it was that easy or not. It may have only had one direction or other directions he had to take. It may have been longer than 22 miles, but I'm sure it was less than 45 miles. These are pictures here of a combination of trips, my 2002 trip and my 2013 trip. And I'm coming up on 7 minutes, so I'm going to start talking quicker. But this is the Farley farm. This is Cow Creek right here, okay? And the Farley farm was right here. Now, we know that from our 2000 trip because we talked to the neighbors, we talked to the descendants. They took us to where the Farley farm was and the original Chafin farm was. This is the chimney from the original Farley farm that Granddad talks about. They went to the Farleys, they ate, he made a bed of bough up in the hills up here and stayed there for 2 or 3 days when my granddad went back to the Chafin farm. And this is the actual chimney. So they sat in this cabin right here and they ate and probably warmed themselves up in this chimney right here with wood burning because it was during the fall, I believe, and I'll explain that in a minute. This is a picture of the chimney from the road. If you were to drive by there today, you wouldn't see it because it's all grown over, but the chimney is still there. And this is the well, the water well, just outside the area. You can see this building in the back. There's a well right in front of it, and that's what this is. And he talks about how he went up above and made a bed about by a fence post. So what I did was walked up to the top of the mountain, and believe it or not, there's an old fence line right there. And look at that post. It's still there. So yes, that's confirming there's a fence line up there, just like he said. And so he probably camped out up here with a bed of bough, which is just some brush put together. This is the view of the opening into Sang Branch from Cow Creek, which is the east side from Melvin Farley's property. And this is where they stopped. This is where he thought there was probably going to be an ambush, if anywhere, because this was a high area. Easily, you could put some snipers up here and wait for somebody to come through, because that was an easy path to go through. That was the crossover to Cow Creek. This is a picture of the famous Hatfield family. As you can see, they're all dressed warm. It was in 1897, we know because of the records. And this picture was taken 3 months after the jailbreak. So we know it was a cold time during the time, and within 3 months of this picture. I wish I could say I got less than a minute to show you. Let me see if I can get down here before I have to cut myself off. But this is a picture of a 1904 map that shows where the Chafin and Farley farms were, and a mill grist, which my granddad talks about in this story. All right, so that's it for now. I wish I could show you more. I'm going to go